Welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. We are two retired New York City police detectives with 20 plus years of law enforcement. If you like all things true crime related, please hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Hey guys, I'm going to do a condensed version because tonight we had to change up our programming. We have Jennifer Coffindaffer, retired FBI special agent. Ed Wallace and myself, we had a complete show for you guys on a couple of different topics, but we did have to change up gears in light of what happened down in Texas, the school shooting. We're all taken back by this because a lot of us are parents and a lot of us, are aunts, uncles. And when you talk about a shooting, in Uvalde, are talking about little kids to second grade all the way going up to sixth grade. So it's really a difficult situation. Ed and I have been on the phone back and forth, and Jen has been traveling. We've been communicating with each other. Here on this panel, you have law enforcement from the local and the federal level. So we're going to give you a good overview of our thoughts. Our prayers and strength goes out to that community. We're talking about 21 total souls lost, including this perpetrator. And it's never an easy pill to swallow. Ed, I know that you, been looking at this during the course of the day. Any thoughts? Here we are a week and a half later from Buffalo. We're speaking about another mass shooting. This is insanity.
It is insanity. It breaks my heart, and there's no reason for it. How many times do we have to see these things? You can go all the way back to Virginia Tech and work your way through the various school shootings. But first and foremost, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, my prayers for the victims and the victims' families, the survivors of the victims, and that they're going to have to deal with this nightmare now. And I pray that God will give them some solace, that their loved ones are in heaven with him at this point in time and are feeling no pain anymore and will know only love and joy.
Yeah. Terrible, terrible. Jen, I know that you've been traveling all day, but, all of the Crime Time with DutyRon family, we all love and appreciate your commentary and everything that you have to say. Just your thoughts from somebody retired from the federal side. This is just all too, we deal with this all too often. And anytime we have a loss of life like this or a mass shooting, it just brings us all to our knees.
It really does. Ron, I have to just say, when we're talking about an elementary, where my understanding is the oldest one that lost their life is 10 years old. That's the last I heard. It's just tragic. And I have to mimic that. My prayers, my thoughts are just extend out to all of these families because they are truly suffering. This community is going to continue to suffer. And unfortunately, this just seems to be a never-ending crisis in our country.
Yeah, yeah. And again, folks in the chat, I know that, this could be triggering for a lot of you guys and gals out there. So if this is, you're sensitive to this type of stuff, I mean, we're going to be talking about some sensitive information here tonight. But before we get into it with Jennifer and Ed, we are going to talk about, crime scene and a lot of different aspects. But we're going to touch lightly on this because this community is going through it. But you guys need to know that there is so much work that has to be done to put this all together and to figure out what happened. But we're going to let you listen to Governor Abbott. He made a news conference just a short time ago. I want you guys to just hear from outside the country because I know there's folks from the UK here, people from New Zealand, and a whole bunch of different places. So I'm just going to play this quick clip with Governor Abbott. It's only 3 minutes long, and I'll let that roll, and this will give you guys a good overview.
First, I want to tell you that what happened in Uvalde is a horrific tragedy that cannot be tolerated in the state of Texas. And there is swift action being taken by local law enforcement as well as the Texas Department of Public Safety. They obviously now know who the shooter was, and the shooter is no longer alive. Let me give you some details, and then I'll give you a summation about that. The shooter was Salvador Romas, an 18-year-old male who resided in Uvalde. It's believed that he abandoned his vehicle and entered into the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde with a handgun, and he may have also had a rifle, but that is not yet confirmed according to my most recent report. He shot and killed horrifically, incomprehensibly, 14 students and killed a teacher. Mr. Romas, the shooter, he himself is deceased and is believed that responding officers killed him. It appears that 2 responding officers were struck by rounds, but have no serious injuries. The Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District Police Department is the investigating agency, and we will provide them and the city of Uvalde substantial investigative and patrol assistance. We're in the process of obtaining detailed background information on the subject, his motive, the types of weapons used, the legal authority to possess them, and conduct a comprehensive crime scene investigation and reconstruction, and identify and interview all witnesses and provide victim services and other support as needed. Victor Escalon is the Texas Department of Public Safety South Texas Regional Director. He is on the scene, and everything that can be done will be done. In addition to that, it is being reported that the subject shot his grandmother right before he went into the school. And I have no further information about the connection between those 2 shootings. And the subject is reported to have been a student at Uvalde High School and is a U.S. citizen. Bottom line is this, however, and that is when parents drop their kids off at school, they have every expectation to know that they're going to be able to pick their child up when that school day ends. And there are families who are in mourning right now, and the state of Texas is in mourning with them for the reality that these parents are not going to be able to pick up their children. Our job is multifold. First, to make sure we address exactly what happened at this crime scene, and then second, to make sure we take that information and do everything that is necessary to ensure that crime scenes like this are not going to be repeated in the future, and that we're going to be able to ensure the safety and security of our schools.
Thank you, guys.
I'll be happy to take any follow-up question about that they may have.
There was 14 students and teachers, or 15 in total.
That is the information that I have.
You said the officers were okay that were acting that were.
It's my understanding that 2 officers were shot, but other than the wounds they sustained, they will not be fatal shots. They were going to survive their being shot. All right. Thank you all.
All right. So that was the press conference, and I just want to be clear that the numbers from that press conference have risen. Ed, you spoke with me before we went live that the update is 21. By the figures that we have, that's 18 students, 18 children lost their lives.
1 teacher,
And
the
and
suspect's
grandmother.
grandmother, and then the suspect.
Golly, why is this happening? I got to say that, and I just had to go out and just say that because out of anger. I talked so many times on Crime Time with DutyRon about change and about our politicians. They all get together, and listen, this is not a politician bashing session, but I want to just say this. I have all too often see politicians come out and speak after these mass shootings and talk about gun change, gun legislation. That's the answer. Well, we clearly see that that is not the answer. And my problem is that we as citizens, we need to be able to send our children to school and higher education, and have them safe and secure. And if nothing is done about that, then we're going to continue to see bloodshed across the United States on an epic level. And until they do something to shore up safety and security, and I don't care if that means putting 5 armed people or somebody in military style, the uniform at the entrances and exits of our educational institutions. If that's what it takes, and I mean, I know that sounds extreme and I know it's expensive, but something has to be done. There needs to be some type of layer of protection for our children. And until that happens, you can put the highest and most strict gun laws in place. We have it with drugs, and drugs keep coming into our country. And I know my guests somewhat agree with me on this, and we come from the same backgrounds. Jen, any thoughts on that?
First of all, I wholeheartedly agree with that. These schools need to be made hard, if you will, where they have bulletproof glass at the reception where no one can get in but for a receptionist. All doors need to be auto-locked from the exterior. They need to have appropriate fencing. I'm not talking about concertina wire, but I'm talking about appropriate fencing where a car can't get in and crash, like what happened in this situation. I believe the car crashed very close to the school where he dismounted and came upon the school. So I very much believe that we're talking about making our schools safe. Unfortunately, as I always say, when we impose, the horse done left the barn. There are millions of weapons on the streets, and the people who go and get licensed, and I instructed for many years in Texas as a CHL instructor. It's so difficult, or was, to get your CHL. Fingerprinting, full background check. I had a guy who's a very upstanding citizen, but when he was very young, had a record and he couldn't get his license. So unfortunately, these laws are really not addressing the criminal element. And if this ends up being similar to Sandy Hook, which you'll recall that perpetrator's last name was Lanza, he got his weapons from his mother. They went out and would target shoot. So I'm wondering if we're going to see something similar here where a parent had them and then the child took them.
Ed, your thoughts?
Well, I wrote about this in a blog after the Parkland shooting, and you need a multi-tiered, multi-layered security plan for all these schools. And it is not as if there hasn't been any studies on this. The Justice Department, the National Institute of Justice, gave grant monies out, conducted studies, found best practices, and so forth. And the fact that the school boards have not enacted these things or are resistant to these things is mind-boggling to me. So the crime scene is still being processed. So I really don't want to get any deeper into this area, but it's just I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken. I'm destroyed that in this. This is still happening, even though everybody by this day and age should know what the right thing to do is to protect these kids in schools. And they haven't done it. They haven't committed the money. They haven't committed the personnel. They haven't committed. Why? Yeah. You're killing our future.
Yeah. I can't agree with you more. And, the folks that are in the chat are also agreeing. There's so many ideas. There's so many things that could be put into play to try to stop, to try to put a hole in the dam. You have a boat that's leaking. You want to try to stop it up. You got to start somewhere. And conversations, that doesn't get this done. And I'm sick of saying this, because if you go back and look at all of I have a playlist on mass shootings. That's sad in itself, right? But if you look at my playlist on mass shootings, this is what I say. Conversations and arguments do not get anything done. Actions is what gets this done. And if you can't start with our children and making them safe while they're at school, then shame on you. Shame on you. I'm going to play a little clip from Banfield. She talked about Sandy Hook, and she really gets worked up and she gets very emotional. So I want to play this quickly for you guys and let you see this piece. This is from earlier today.
We want to bring in Ashleigh Banfield, now host of Newsnation's Banfield. And Ashleigh, yet another mass shooting. I want to talk to you about what the parents are going through. But first, I don't want to ignore what we just heard there from Senator Chris Murphy asking, what are we doing? I mean, we had another mass shooting where 10 people were killed a week and a half ago. Now we're talking about, as the senator said, another elementary school shooting. And this is just tragic. No matter what you feel about gun control, none of us want to see this loss of life.
That's my senator. Chris Murphy's my senator in Connecticut. That's my state, and that's where Sandy Hook happened. 40 minutes from my house, Sandy Hook. So, when Sandy Hook happened, I was on the air. It broke on my show, and I immediately packed up from the anchor set in New York City, and I drove with a photographer to Sandy Hook and set up outside Sandy Hook. So what I'm seeing on the screen right now is extraordinarily reminiscent of what I saw in 2012. It's identical. This is a playbook now that we can all follow. You'll get aerial shots of law enforcement officers outside the elementary school as they start to process the dead. The bodies are still in there, Nicole. Those children's bodies are still in there. And they will be there for quite some time as those law enforcement officers start dropping little orange cones all over that building where they find bullets and evidence and fragments and body parts of babies. We went through this in 2012. The emotion that you saw from Chris Murphy is real. It is felt by all of us, not just in the press who were there, not just the senators who represent. It is felt by everyone in America who had to stomach the fact that little children were blown to bits in their classroom, one after the other, by a teenager. Adam Lanza was a young man who went to that school, right? Adam Lanza killed his mother and then took off for the school. And this young man at 18, allegedly killing his grandmother and then going to the school. Adam Lanza killed himself. I am only assuming that maybe this young, troubled individual at 18 maybe killed himself. I don't know. I know there's an exchange of gunfire, but Chris Murphy is right. What the hell are we doing? I am an immigrant to this country. This doesn't happen in Canada, where I'm from. I love my country. I am a citizen here, but I cannot sit by and continue to report on these stories. I lost it in Sandy Hook.
I understand.
I could barely breathe. I could barely breathe. And here I am again, 10 years later, doing that same story at approximately the same time of day about the same exact thing.
The same exact
Nicole,
thing.
I just don't even know what else to say.
I know it is so difficult. And that's one thing when Senator Murphy was speaking, it really does bring up so much trauma for so many people. And I think, these mass shootings sadly have become something that just are. They've become something that just are, but we have to remember. And I think, when you were describing the fact that those bodies are still in there, the bodies of little children, because we know this school was enrollment is only 2nd through 4th grade. So we're talking about 2nd graders, 3rd graders, and 4th graders, as well as a teacher. And we know that their little bodies are still sitting on the floor. And that is so graphic, but I think sometimes we almost need to hear those details so this doesn't become white noise and it doesn't become something that we just move on from.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you for saying that, because one after another, we're becoming really sanitized. So there's that news story again, another shooting. Let's just remember exactly what's happening this minute in this town of Uvalde, Texas, a state where I lived for 5 years and got to know well. There are little children's torn apart bodies. And I am sorry for being real here, but you can't just look at your television right now and say, how sad, another shooting. It's not just another shooting. It's another Sandy Hook. It's another catastrophe. You could say it's another 9/11. I mean, how much more are we going to take of this until we actually do something? And I just want to state something here that may have gone by very quickly. Allie, who was reporting earlier, Nicole, mentioned that law enforcement told her that the girlfriend of this shooter had said to law enforcement that she was going to finish the job. That's an investigation that's probably happening right now, because who knows if this is just this one shooter, or if this was a cabal or a plan, or maybe a pair, or maybe a movement, or maybe a political idea.
Right.
Who knows what it was, but we've got to find out. And then we've got to take some kind of action. Republicans, Democrats alike, wake the hell up. This just has got to stop.
It really does. You know, and Ashleigh, I know that you are a mom. You know, I want to talk about the parents in all this, because this is truly a parent's absolute worst nightmare. Of course, they have a staging, you know, away from the school, but I think every frightened, panicked parent is going to immediately come to the school. How do you talk to your kids when something like this happens?
Yeah, I think we all have to talk the same way. It doesn't even matter that I was 40 minutes away from Sandy Hook. I had to drive by my own kids' elementary school to go and report on Sandy Hook. And that was hard, you know, because they were all locked down and I wanted to stop and ensure that they were okay. But this is an American story. This is not just a Uvalde story. This is not a Texas story. This is an American story. And every parent has to sit down and talk to their kids about what's blanketing the news, not just today, but it's going to be tomorrow and the next day and for several weeks, because this is a headline that just doesn't go away very quickly. And I don't know. I mean, I did what I could. I tried to tell my kids the reality that we're living in without terrifying them and destroying them. But how much reality, you know, can you impart on your kids?
I wanted to show that because of the sheer emotion that she displayed. And you don't see that in many news reporters. And I just had to stop it there because it would go on for another 10 minutes. This is just clear and evident that we're all shook by this, you know, and she said almost exactly what I just said. When are we going to stop talking about it and doing something to change it? Ed, I know you're still muted. I don't know if you know that you're still muted. I wanted to go to you, Ed. I saw you during that. You were shaking your head. I know that there's a lot more to the story, but again, right now, this is a fresh open wound, and this is real emotion. You don't see this on regular news, and that's why I like Newsnation, because it's kind of raw and unedited, and these reporters can pretty much say how they're feeling. Again, as parents, it's a hard conversation to have, but you know, we can't just roll up and curl up into a little ball and say, oh, poor us, what are we going to do? There needs to be action, and action has to happen sooner than later, otherwise we're going to be seeing this again.
We're going to see it again because nobody's doing what needs to be done. We got to stop the politics. We got to stop the infighting. We got to stop the tribalism. We got to stop all these things that separate us, okay, and join together and understand there is evil among us, okay? There are mentally ill that should not be walking our streets, all right? There are criminals that should not be walking our streets. We have a revolving door justice system right now. Now, I really didn't want to get into this because, you know, I put myself on mute because the president was speaking, and I went to watch what he was saying, and I was disgusted, okay, because he turned it into politics. These people, these victims are still there in the crime scene. They haven't left yet. Can't we just put politics aside? And let's give the support and love that's needed to this community, and let's deal with the investigation and find out all the nuances of what occurred here. Okay, the who, what, where, and how, and why. Why do we have to jump into politics? Why do we have to start pointing fingers at whatever the agenda is? Yeah. The agenda should be to keep our kids safe in the schools. And there's no reason in this day and age that has not happened yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree. And the commander-in-chief, I believe, you know, it's his responsibility to make some changes and say, hey, I'm going to try to make this safer through the federal government. And the federal government has to start funding, a better plan for safety, for something to stop these threats when they're happening, for someone to challenge these types of threats outside before it happens inside these buildings. I want to talk about mental health, because we know that a lot of the components and a lot of the things that circle around somebody that gets into this type of mindset, we see a mental health component in this. Jen, all too often we're talking, if it's New York City subway, a shooter that just, a month and a half ago went into a subway station and shot up as many people as he could on a platform. And we know that he was a YouTube ranter and talking about race and all kinds of craziness, and mental health comes into play there. We talk about it and we see it. I'm sure that the feds and all of the locals, state and the partners who investigate this, they're going to be looking at that. Any thoughts on that, Jen?
Well, absolutely. I can't recall one school shooter that didn't have some sort of mental issue in terms of things that they said prior to them committing the acts they committed. And many of them, of course, said they were bullied. They end up having this rage within them. And it's a theme that we see over and over again. And I think besides the hard exterior that we need to make at these schools, we also need to help with the mental health issue. And we need to educate parents. What do you do when you see these sorts of attitudes like isolationism, anger, obsession with weaponry, all of these things? They need to be educated on, what do I do when my child is displaying this?
Right. And, again, too, we have our institutions where it's an in and out, open door, revolving door thing. I saw it, Ed, you definitely saw it when you were on patrol. We would bring somebody who is suffering some severe, emotional distress, different types of levels of mental illness. We bring them to the hospital. We would take them by force and bring them to the hospital, and they would be right out. By the time we went end of tour or came back in for our next shift, we'd see that very same person who was homicidal, suicidal, talking to the TV, talking about people out to get them. And we would see that same person right back out. And I'm talking about 3 decades ago, right? That was happening 3 decades ago. It's happening still now in our country. Police are going to get called to someone's home and wrestle somebody down who is exhibiting mental health issues, and he's going to be sent to the hospital, and he or she, and they're going to be given medication, and they're not going to keep taking the medication. They're going to come out, and it's the same situation. And now you take guns where their parents have guns in the house and they're not locking them down, or they have access to weapons where they can buy them illegally or get them or obtain them. It's not going to stop. And to have our commander in chief and all of our politicians, for that matter, to sit and have a conversation and talk about politics on the backs of 18 dead children and a total of 21 people, including this deranged gunman, dead, is ludicrous. It's going to get zero done. And that's what makes it frustrating. That's what makes us angry. That's what makes us mad as hell, and we don't want to take it anymore. But again, somebody said in the chat, walk the walk, but talk the talk and do the act. Do what you talk about. A conversation about changing laws is not going to stop this, and it's insane. I want to, again, Ed, go ahead.
It's not a gun issue.
Yeah.
It's a societal issue. It's a social issue. Okay. There are many things at play here. Take away the guns. And I write about this and I researched it. Take away the guns. And what do you have? You have places like China where you have mass killings in schools where they use a knife. They didn't have a gun there. They couldn't get a gun. So a crazed man goes into a school with a knife and he starts killing kids. Okay. Yeah. And that's just one example. They take the guns away from the UK. And so they had a higher homicide rate in the UK with knives than we did in New York City 2 years ago with guns. Okay. This is about the person. We have to treat the people. Okay. An inanimate object is not the issue. Okay. You could take all the weapons away in the world. Okay. It's still going to happen. It's just they're going to choose something different.
I agree.
I wanted to bring up too that in a way this is a local issue. Yes. From the standpoint, I was reading that in regard to this case, that there was not a lot of money appropriated in terms of school funding. I don't have those exact figures in front of me, but my point is this needs to be the number one place our tax dollars is appropriated to our schools and to their safety. And that is not what's happening. And that can be at a very low local level with the school boards.
Yeah, look at all the waste in school boards. If you looked at what they spent money on over these last couple of years, just during COVID, look at all the waste. And then look what they did with the COVID monies. They were supposed to take that money and secure the schools to protect them from COVID so that they can get in-person schooling again. But the monies went off in all different directions other than its intended purpose. And to me, that's misappropriations of funds, especially since it's coming from the federal government. And nobody gets investigated for it and nobody gets arrested for it. And it's all politics. It's all way of doing business as usual.
Ed, I mean, you're saying it well. And as I had you off the screen and Jen was on, I was looking at the president. I'm not even going to play it because it's just going to get me angry because I was listening in my earpiece to it. So I'm going to leave that up to the audience. If you guys want to go and watch what the POTUS said, you can. I listened to the first a minute and a half and I kind of wanted to throw up. So let's just see what happened here in the chat. Artemis sends in a $10 super chat and she says, somebody did an amazing live before Biden went on. Definitely worth checking out. Like and share these videos, guys. The conversation is so important. Mental health, education, and training. Amen to that. Either my sister or brother. Thank you. Thank you for that input. Again,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, people are going to listen. There's people that are going to say the gun is the issue. Guns are the issues. And you know what? We respect that. That's your opinion to have that, that thought process. But we know for a fact from being in law enforcement, you can have the most stringent gun laws. You can have the most stringent drug laws. And that stuff is still going to get in here. There's gazillions, there's millions, probably close to 1 billion guns out there right now as we speak. So what are you going to do? Send a dragnet out to take in everyone's guns? It's not going to happen. So it's already too late to do that. I mean, I'm just trying to,
The National Academy of Science did a study on gun laws, and they said they're totally ineffective.
Yeah.
All right. They did a study on the assault weapons ban back in the 90s under the Clinton administration. Totally ineffective.
Yeah.
Okay. It's people are growing up without fathers. The family unit has been destroyed. We need to bring that back. Okay. Fathers need to be doing their job. Not the government. It's not the government's responsibility to raise my children. Okay. It's my responsibility. Okay. If you father a child, then you need to be in that child's life. And you need to be there to teach them right and wrong. You need to teach them respect, dignity. You need to teach them ethics. Okay. This is your job. Okay. And it's not the government's job to do that. Unfortunately, too many in our society have left it to the government to do it and take care of their children. And that's one of the problems. And we need to address that. They need a father figure, a role model. Okay. Yeah. I'm just so frustrated right now.
Yeah, I understand, Ed. I understand. Listen, there is no one clear answer to this, but what you are saying, Ed, is 100% correct. When we father and mother a child, the parents get together, whether they break up and it's just a one-parent household or whatever the case may be, it's up to the mother or the father or both together to show and teach what's right and wrong and to stay on top. Listen, you and I both know we have grown, our children are men now, right? We both have 2 children in 25 and 29, they're men. I still ask my 25-year-old and 29-year-old, how's your day? Talk to me. Are you okay? I ask those questions to them. I say, how's everything, son? I love you. I want to talk to you. You want to sit down? We sit down at dinner time. Everything all right at work? Everything going okay? That's just part of what you should do. And when parents and families disconnect, when they're like this in their phones and they don't give 2 flying shits about anything that's going on, you can't detect when something is up. And it doesn't take a detective or FBI agent to figure it out. It takes a good parent. And
You
that's,
know, oh,
that's
sorry, Ron.
it's one
No, go
of
ahead.
the starting points. Go ahead, Jen.
No, I totally concur. I just wanted to say that something we just implemented in our household, because I have a little 13-year-old, and I was just so tired of not only him, but me, everybody on their phone. So we're not allowed to be on the phone at any meals, any restaurants. The phone goes down on the table.
That's perfect.
I've learned so much.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and it's important because kids nowadays are completely strapped to their phones. Their schools almost require it because of how they do homework and how they send out assignments. They have to be on these electronic devices. So I think it's just exactly what you're saying. It's a breakdown of the family, breakdown of society. We're watching it happen right before our eyes. And
Yeah. Yeah.
They have no, they're too dependent on the internet. I mean, we have to limit their access to the internet. We as parents need to know what sites they're visiting, who they're talking to, what they're doing at every day and every minute of the day and night. I mean, that is our job. Okay. And please, I respect everybody in the chat. I honestly do. You may have a different opinion than me about firearms. That's fine. That's your opinion. You're entitled to it. Okay. I'm not going to say you're right. I'm not going to say you're wrong. It's just different than mine. Okay. But this may cause some controversy too, we've taken God out of our lives and replaced him with government. And that should never be the case. Okay. And we need to get back to that. We need to get that back in our lives. Okay. And walk that path. Okay. Because we're not doing it now. We are not doing it now. We're at each other's throats, and this cannot. Abraham Lincoln, a house divided cannot survive. Okay, this needs to stop.
United we stand, divided we fall, and it comes into play here. We need to be all in this together. So many people are all over the place in the chat, and I respect the different opinions. We all respect the different opinions because that's what this is about. A conversation has to have both sides. Nobody needs to argue, and that's what's great about Crime Time with DutyRon is everyone is respectful. Schmitty, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. And she says complainancy. That it is what it is attitude should never apply to something like this. People must be engaged. This is infuriating. Amen, sister. Schmitty, I couldn't have said it better. Where you are emulating that feeling here tonight. And again, we will be back, unfortunately, on the air at some time going forward and talking about another one of these. And that's the crazy part. And that's what makes it more infuriating and more scary is that, when you spin your wheels, and I'm saying this, guys, I'm saying it again. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we hear the same spiel. Go back and listen to a week and a half ago up in Buffalo and listen to the conversation. Go back to the city subway shooter. Go back to Parkland. Go back to, Sandy Hook. You're going to hear the same set of nonsense. And nothing has changed from Sandy Hook to today. There really haven't been much change safety-wise in the schools. I'm talking about schools. My brother was a director of security out in Long Island in Suffolk County in a big, very wealthy school district. They had an active shooter plan. They had retired security, but they had no armed guards. The superintendent of the schools was against it. So they had a bunch of retired cops there, and they couldn't bring their guns. They weren't allowed. We don't want guns on our school. What happens if somebody comes up like this? At that location, my brother and I, he's a retired lieutenant from the NYPD. My brother said, Ronnie, the guys come here, we're done. We're doomed. Nobody can stop it. I have to leave my gun at home. I'm not allowed to bring it to work. What the hell's wrong? That's this year. That was in 2022. I don't know. Ed, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. We're the people you want to have a gun in that location. We're the people that are trained. We're the people that are going to respond. We're going to run towards the shots, not away from the shots. Okay. We spent our lives doing this, right? And just because we retired, you just don't when you retire, throw a light switch off and then you don't act that way anymore. It just doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm about public service. I'm about protecting people. I'm about helping people. Okay. And, just because I retired doesn't mean that I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to be that way anymore. I'm still the same guy, just retired.
Yeah. And that's the problem, Ed, is that the powers that be that are behind these locations, these schools, these, even houses of worship, they don't want it. I think they're a little bit more, susceptible to it. Look at, we had that shooter that came in, I believe it was in Texas. I'm not sure. I think it was in one of the Midwest states, and there was armed guys, security in there, and they took him out. He came into a Pentecostal, I believe, church and started shooting it up. And he was taken out. I don't remember what state that was. If somebody knows or remembers what I'm talking about, it was probably 5 years ago.
It was retired. It was retired cop that did that.
Yeah, he was a deputy sheriff or whatever, retired, and an older gentleman, and he took his piece out, walked up. There's video of it. Walked up to the altar and engaged this guy while everybody was just ducking and getting shot. Dr. Moskowitz, thank you for the $20 super sticker. We need to refer and follow up with psychiatry patients. He's a doctor. This is Dr. Moskowitz from Pocatello, Idaho. We happen to run across. Doctors, wake up. We have done rotations in the psych. I see you see something in a patient, you refer them for a follow-up. Absolutely, Dr. Ed. Thank you. Thank you.
We have plenty of laws on the books that aren't being enforced. Let's just put it that way. Okay. Yeah. If I would have done what some famous person's son did, I'd been in jail already for a fraudulent NIC form to purchase a firearm. If I would have discarded a firearm in a garbage pail, I would have been arrested.
Yeah.
Okay. There's plenty of laws on the books. We just need to enforce the laws and equal justice under the law, not a two-tier justice system. That all has to be in play, but we have to deal with these social issues. Okay. We have to get back to the basics. All right. And with so much time between Sandy Hook and what happened today, why hasn't the school boards done anything? Why?
Yeah.
I do want to give a quick shout out. After the Stoneman Douglas in St. Johns County, Florida, and I know this firsthand, everything changed. I walked into that elementary school and the bulletproof glass was up. There was an armed guard the entire time. The fencing was changed. The doors, you could not get in other than there was only one entrance and one exit. And they did the proper things. They had a site survey done. They hired a company. That's where they spent their funds to make sure they had that school appropriately barricaded against such an event. And they did a great job, I think, throughout St. Johns County.
Well, good for them.
I know it's being done some places, again, under DeSantis.
Right. Good for them. But I guarantee you they're the minority and not the majority of this.
Agreed.
All right. But there should be a case study done of what they're doing. You need a multi-tiered, layered. You have to try to stop them from getting in the first place. Keep them out of the facilities, right? And then if they get in, you have to have the ability to lock them down, trap them in a location where they can't get to anybody. And if they get past that layer, then you have to have ballistic walls, ballistic glass, and heavy duty doors and locks so they can't get into the classroom. Now, if they get into the classroom, your final line of defense is an armed teacher.
Yeah.
Okay. I wrote about this. I've studied this. It just amazes me that they just drag their feet. It's almost as if they want this to continue. And I just don't understand it.
Yeah. Michelle Ballard, thank you so much for the super sticker. And thank you to Cindy Epperson for reminding me because I didn't remember. Ron, it was White Settlement, Texas. That was the church.
That's right. I remember that. Right.
Texas armed gunman came into the White Settlement church and he was taken out by an armed good guy. Sandy Hook took place in Newton, Connecticut on December 14th, 2012, 10 years ago. Almost 10 years. So again, we're here back. This is mirroring Sandy Hook. And thank you, Rocky, for the $10 super chat. $10 super chat comes in. Rocky Canine. As a minimum, schools need to be fenced and have no free side access. Retired police officer can be hired and paid as bailiffs. When we send our kids to school, we assume that they would come home back safe and alive.
You know, I want to say another thing about politicians. They don't talk to us. They don't talk to law enforcement when they're making these ridiculous laws.
Right.
Okay. They don't consult with us. I don't know what experts they're dealing with, but whoever is advising them or not giving them good information, the best information is going to come from us on the streets, okay, who deal with this on a day-to-day basis. Colin Ferguson, mass shooter, shot up the Long Island Railroad, okay? He bought a 9mm legally in California. He established residence in a hotel in California. He met all the requirements. He bought that gun in California, and then he came back to New York with it. And actually, he was looked at as a suspect in the Zodiac shootings here in New York City because he fit the artist's rendition of him from the eyewitnesses, but it wasn't him. But when the task force grabbed him and brought him in for questioning, they immediately notified, Nassau County. He said, "Hey, you got to keep an eye on this guy because something's wrong with this guy," and not knowing that he had a firearm. So he shoots up the subway, kills a lot of people. All right, creates a politician out of it. And what does the New York politicians do? They ban assault rifles. Oh, I'm sorry, assault weapons, alleged assault weapons. He used a handgun. What did that have to do? I mean, that was a knee-jerk reaction to what happened. Okay, these things solve nothing. Okay, what did they do that did work? They allowed us off-duty and retired cops to now ride the Long Island Railroad for free.
Yeah.
Before that, we couldn't ride it for free. We had to pay. And so now by giving us that opportunity to ride for free, they had more law enforcement riding their trains back and forth, going to and from work.
I want to tell you, that was the Mineola train station, which is local to my home here. And 1993 is when that occurred. My brother and I, we were here in my house, and that shooting went off, and we went there, both of us, and we saw those bodies on that train because we were able to get access up into the crime scene. And let me tell you something, that was shocking to see that. But in our profession, again, in 1991, we saw 2,200 murders in the city of New York. But in my home area, I've taken that train into the city. I've taken the train. And then that was what came out of it. We got those LIRR passes every year. We had a sign for them. Remember that, Ed?
Yeah, Metro North, the LIRR, we got those passes.
We were able to go on, and they wanted as many armed, police, retired. Even now, if I go on to the train and I show my retired ID, a lot of the conductors will just say, "Oh, you don't have to pay. You could just yeah, you're good." Because they want that much. That's how much. That was their answer. That's what they wanted to do, and I think that is a deterrent a little bit. But we haven't seen a shooting like that on Long Island Railroad, but we have seen shootings in the subway. Absolutely.
And remember the Staten Island ferry incident, right? So you're in the ferry in the middle of the harbor, right? And you have back in the day, I think it was in the 90s, and Mark Del Pino was a detective that I worked with in the 7-0, and Phil Grimaldi knows him as well. I see Phil is here. He got shot in a burglary. Anyhow, his father was off duty, retired rather, than on that ferry, and a samurai wielding psychopath starts slicing people up on the ferry, and his father took him out. So
I wanted to mention one other thing, about training. When I was young, grew up in Kansas, and about 4 times a year we did the tornado drill, right? Run out into the hall, put your head down, your hands over your head. These kids and teachers need to be getting active shooter training, needs to be paid for by their district, and they need to have drills 2, 3, 4 times. When that goes off, when somebody presses the buzzer, they lock that door, they put down a blind so the shooter can't penetrate the classroom, doesn't know who's in there, and they get down and get in an appropriate place of cover and concealment. How all schools aren't doing this in light of what's happening is beyond me.
Yeah.
No.
It's just things that make you go home. And how many more incidents are going to happen before there's some type of change where they're shoring up our facilities, where not just the education facilities, but you go out to a sporting event. What is it gonna take for, God forbid, at one of these major sporting events, someone to get in? But Ed, talk about what they did here. I can't go into Citi Field to see a New York Mets game with my gun. They stop everybody from coming in there with no weapon. So there's the plan that actually works, because they don't allow anybody to come in with a gun, period. The only people inside that stadium with a gun is if you're working, you're on duty, or you're state, federal, on the job with the dogs or whatever. That's the only people that are armed inside these stadiums. But if I go to the Barclays Center, I'm able to go in there with my gun, but I have to show my ID and prove who I am, so they know.
And you got to tell them where you're seated and all of that.
I have, and this is not a secret. I'm not giving away trade secrets. They give you a wristband. So when security comes and they're there, it's almost like you're identified by a wristband. Super chats are coming in like crazy, so let me get to them. Artemis says family member lost their life on the Long Island Railroad that night. Colin Ferguson represented himself. It was awful. I remember in court he represented himself, and he's a complete maniac, lunatic. There's another case of mental health and deep anger and hatred. Little Bit sends in a super sticker. Thank you for that. Ed, you were highlighting, and I'm unhighlighting. Phil Grimaldi, detective from Police Off the Cuff. Phil is a great friend of the family here. Thank you, Phil, for the super sticker, and thank you for being here in the chat. Always great to hear your opinions and your input on Police Off the Cuff, another great YouTube channel of ethical retired detective sergeant from the homicide squad, Bill Cannon, and Phil Grimaldi. Was he a first grader or a second grader? You'll know this, Ed. I think he was a second. I think he's second.
If you were first, Phil, I apologize.
No, he's a second. He's a second grader, but we love him irregardless. It doesn't matter. Phil, thank you so much for that super chat. Again, I have another little piece. It's only 5 minutes, but I'm not going to play the whole thing. It's rush hour. I want folks to see this because this is an earlier report. So again, these numbers won't be the same, but just let's watch this for some of our folks. Detective second grade. There you go. Phil worked with homicide in Brooklyn South or Brooklyn North, I believe. Brooklyn North. South is for the sissies. North is for the
easy.
I'm a Brooklyn North guy. I have to say it. And Queens Marines, we all know about the Queens Marines. Let's play this little piece and then we'll wrap it up. Here we go. Rush hour. Again, this is from earlier, so some of this stuff won't be updated, but I want folks from outside the country to see some of the reporting.
Welcome back to Newsnation Rush Hour. Our coverage continues of this breaking news happening this morning at around 11:30 Central Time. A mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas, happening at an elementary school, Robb Elementary School. We know that 14 children are dead, one teacher also deceased. Right now, we also know a 10-year-old girl and a 66-year-old woman are in critical condition. As you can see, correspondent Robert Sherman is live on the scene. Robert, what can you tell us right now?
I can tell you right now, Nicole, that the scene that we are here at, you only have to stand here for a few moments to realize just how heavy this whole situation is. A moment ago, we saw a car slam on its brakes about a block away and a child ran out sprinting towards the school. This is a small community of only 16,000 people. This is a fluid scene. There's a lot that we don't know at this hour. But here's what we definitively do know. This afternoon, we know that 14 children were killed while they were here at this elementary school that's behind us, second to fourth graders. One teacher was killed as well. The governor tells us that law enforcement responded to the scene. The shooter, they told us, is now dead. There are two more people who are currently in critical condition over at the nearby hospital, a 66-year-old woman and a 10-year-old child. This is a small community. This is a tight-knit group of people who live here and who go to this school on a consistent basis. And you can see just walking down the street here how there are families that are standing in their yard gazing incredulously at this scene that is right behind us. Many of them cannot believe that this would happen here in their own community. We know that we are going to be getting new information from local law enforcement shortly. But again, you cannot emphasize enough that there is a lot of information that we still don't know. We've seen people try to speculate or guess at a motive. We are not going to be doing that. Certainly that will become more clear in the coming days. Right now, everything is quite opaque. There are a lot of questions here. Why did this happen? But at the end of the day, the reality is 14 children dead, 1 teacher. Those families will not be holding their loved ones tonight. And there are 2 more families who are holding on desperately, waiting anxiously to know about their loved ones at the nearby hospital. Nicole?
And Robert, as you speak to us, we are taking a look at pictures from earlier today from the scene. Just absolutely tragic. Robert, I know you're live there on the scene. Describe for us what we're seeing now. At this point, we're about 5.5 hours removed from the actual shooting. So describe what you're seeing on the ground.
Well, here right now, we've seen that this whole area has been cordoned off. For the most part, where we're standing right now is a heavy media presence. This is a very residential neighborhood. You go street to street here, and it's all homes. And again, you see a lot of people who are just standing on their front lawns, just waiting to know more information. And that is the thing that is so abundantly clear down here, Nicole. There are still so many questions. There's still this utter disbelief in the air that something like this would be happening in this small of a community, a town of 16,000 people, just a couple hours away from San Antonio, a little over an hour away from the U.S.-Mexico border, really just caught in between all these different communities. Many very clearly distraught by what has happened here today. Most of the families we know are over at the reconciliation area, where a lot of these families are regathering with their other loved ones in order to learn more information, reconnect with their children who are inside. So you don't see much in the way of families out here at this hour, just a lot of stunned faces from neighbors.
And for our viewers at home, we do have a little bit of a delay with Robert Sherman, so that's why it's taking a bit of time for him to answer. But Robert, I do want to ask you, because you are Newsnation's border correspondent, you are many times in these towns that are very close to the U.S.-Mexico border. Kind of talk to us about some of the aspects that would make Uvalde unique, because it is essentially a border town.
Right, a little over an hour away from the U.S.-Mexico border. A lot of these communities are have a heavy Hispanic influence here. We know that for a fact. We know a lot of these towns, again, removed from a lot of the major metropolitan areas such as San Antonio. So, I mean, you look around here, it is so peaceful. It is quintessential suburban America here. When you walk around this community, it's just such a small, quiet town that's just caught right in the thick of this utterly horrific scene. And you heard the governor say earlier that situations like this, they're unacceptable. They cannot be tolerated here in the state of Texas. He said that law enforcement action going forward will be swift as they try to get to the bottom of this whole situation. I just cannot emphasize it enough, Nicole, is that especially when we see situations like this, there's a lot of speculation that swirls. But we're taking this one step at a time, going with what we know definitively at this hour and what is crystal clear, not what is opaque.
Absolutely. Robert Sherman live for us at the scene in Uvalde, Texas. Robert, stick around. We're obviously going to check back in with you. Thank you.
All right, so there it was. I wanted some folks to see that. I think that was some, gave us a good look at on the ground there. Again, we're talking about a combination of different things here, and people in the chat, they're all getting it. So I want to say thank you to everybody who's in the chat, and thank you to all of the new and returning subscribers. You guys are what makes this a great place. The engagement and interaction from Crime Time with DutyRon subscribers and friends is just next to none. There's no better community on YouTube, and I commend you guys all for being respectful, being engaging, and giving your side, because here you can voice your opinion as long as you do it respectfully. So Ed, I know you have a couple of things that you want to add to it, because somebody put up something and I highlighted it purposely because they talked about video games. And I know this is not the time or the place, Ed, but you mentioned this on the Buffalo shooting.
Yeah, it desensitizes our children to crime and to committing crime. They don't understand the ramifications that once you squeeze that trigger on that gun, that bullet can't be recoiled back and you can't be regenerated like some video game. Okay. It is permanent, and you're going to deal with the effects of it afterwards. I just want to touch on two other things. I'll save something for the end when we're going off air. But I guess the only way that this is ever going to change, just as the parents of our school children have risen up to deal with curriculum issues, these same parents need to deal with this issue as well, and go to their school boards and hold their school boards accountable for not increasing security at the schools. Okay, to the highest level that they could possibly do. There is grant money out there from the federal government that will assist these schools in hardening. Okay, there's plenty of money out there. I just don't understand why you're not taking advantage of these grants, or why you're not, you're spending money on something that you shouldn't be spending money on, while you should be spending money on this and you're not.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Ed, and it comes down to these administrators, going with their beliefs and their thoughts and what their priorities are. The priorities should be safety and security, and I can't say that enough. I'll shout that from the rooftops. I don't know what the hell these people are thinking, but being sensitive to certain issues is going to have to be put on hold. Worrying about hurting someone's feelings for being a little tough on safety and security. They need to push that aside, because we're looking at 18 dead children here. This is just out of control. Kathy from Texas sends in a $20 super chat, and she says, Ron, do you believe that loosening gun laws in Texas was a good deterrent for crime? Listen, I believe that law-abiding citizens who are carrying guns, just like the Tieperman family, we had them on. They're the ones who are the only civilians that witnessed Gonzalo Lopez escape from the bus over in Texas, in Southeast Texas, and they were the only ones to see this perpetrator get off the bus from the civilian side, and she was carrying a Glock 40 caliber on her side, right? She didn't take that gun out and shoot crazily, because she said to us, her training told her that, she needs to be careful about where her rounds go. So law-abiding citizens that are good, that are responsible, are definitely a deterrent to crime, because a good guy with a gun, and I'll say this 100 million times, will be there to beat a bad guy with a gun all day, every day. Go ahead.
How are gun laws loosened? Because they went with constitutional carry? Well, that's not loosening, because when you go to the gun store to buy your gun, you got to go to the FFL dealer, and he's going to conduct a background check on you that's required by law. It's called a NICS background check, and it's an ATF form. It has to be filled out. It goes to the FBI, and the FBI researches you to see if you're disqualified from purchasing a gun.
Right.
I don't understand how the laws were loosened. They weren't loosened. You still have to pass that. And if you don't pass it, you can't get the gun.
Yeah.
Okay. But the point is, I said it time and time again, you are your own first line of defense, not the police. The police, despite their best efforts, are not omnipresent. They're not going to be there exactly the time that you need them. And when seconds matter, the police are minutes, if not longer, away from coming to help you.
Yeah.
So I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
100%. Kathy from Texas, thank you for your support and generosity. I mean, I appreciate the question, and this is no way us yelling at you. We're just answering that question. So please don't take it the wrong way. I love it.
No, nothing personal. No,
you, Kathy. We're answering the question. So, Jen, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just think it's really important that when you decide to get a gun, when people decide to get one, that they get the appropriate training,
Absolutely.
That they get marksmanship training, that they understand tactics, that they understand when you carry a gun, you have a huge responsibility to de-escalate, to control your temper, to basically walk away from situations. Where you use them is when your life or the life of another would be in jeopardy. And we all have that right. And so I would just reach out to everybody in regard to the gun laws. If you do decide to get one get trained, get active shooter training, get educated, and keep an eye on your children.
That's right. 100%, Jen. 100%.
Ed, let's look at the chat a little bit because again, we've been talking for almost an hour and 5 minutes, actually. I want to just turn it over to the chat. Let us know what you think about the conversation here. And again, our first and foremost hearts and prayers go out to the people in that area and in the surrounding areas. These people are hurting right now. There's parents that have no idea. There's some of their children are unaccounted for. So out of those 18 children that are still inside the building, there's parents that are just freaking out, and we have to send them strength, prayers, and positive vibes. That's all we can do is pray for them and give them strength.
And to answer Debbie here, if you're doing this, the person selling it is a criminal, and the person buying it is a criminal.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that, Ed. I'm just pulling up something here. I'm going to take myself off screen just for a moment. I'm going to leave it up to you two. I'm just going to do a quick search. So you two, you got the show just for a moment.
Okay.
And I was gonna mention that I've mentioned it on Twitter before. My sister's son, Nelson, he was one of the Stoneham Douglas victims. When I say victim, he was one crouching below his desk as the shooter was going through and lost 2 friends in that shooting. And I remember my sister calling me frantically, of course, being law enforcement, she was frantic. They wouldn't let the parents in. Obviously, there was a big perimeter set up, and it took hours for contact and to see her son. And so my heart just goes out because I've been on the other end of the phone with a frantic person not knowing how their child is. Right. And what those parents went through today, Ed, it's horrific.
And they're still going through it because these kids will be brought to a center, and then the parents will have to report their show ID, pick up their children, and then going to have to deal with the psychological effects of what just transpired today with these kids. They're going to need a whole lot of counseling. The parents too, should seek some therapy in regards to this incident. Now, as for myself, I'd be processing this crime scene with a team. We would be there a day or two. We have to map everything. We'd have to break out our 3D laser scanners and scan everything, map everything, measure everything, photograph everything. And then we tried to look at some of the CCTV security footage and see how this person made entry, and then follow that route and try to reconstruct the shooting, collect all the ballistics evidence, document bullet holes, document the victims, the wounds, all these things. And it's a slow and methodical process. And given the amount of victims in this space, it's going to take a while. So, and then afterwards, the officers that are involved in this should also seek some therapy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Ed, that's what we need to consider and concentrate on as well. The responding EMTs, paramedics, police officers, detectives, all the investigators. There was folks that were responding from all over the surrounding communities, and mutual aid definitely went out. These folks are going to need definitely to talk to somebody. I have an overview. This is what I removed myself off the screen from. This is from Google Earth, and I want to just show you. I'm going to go full screen with this. This is the Robb Elementary School. So let me just quickly get onto. So this is a look at the campus where the shooting took place. I'm not quite sure where the entrance is, but this looks like the teacher parking in the back. And then this gives you a good look at the campus. Not a small school. It looks like it's broken up into little smaller buildings and then a main building. But yeah, this is what we were looking at from today with the crime scene. But this is just a look above all the homes and people who are around the surrounding area. I'm sure all affected by this as well. traumatizing to them to hear gunfire in the middle of their day.
My
And-
site survey from afar says easy target.
Yes.
Look
And-
at that.
and-
Completely soft.
Yes. And it's just a small jurisdiction that there were only 3 RSOs, school safety officers. There was only 3 of them for the entire community, and there were none here. Okay. I don't even know if they're armed. Some school safety officers aren't armed. So.
Well, hopefully they make the appropriate changes, and it just, when is enough enough? Maybe this is the one that will actually trigger change instead of just jabber.
Yeah, we got to hope and pray for that.
You
But
know-
I want to go ahead, Ed. Go.
For people that keep saying it's a gun issue, it's a gun issue. There are more guns legally owned than we have citizens in the United States. If it was truly a gun issue, we'd have far more deaths than we currently have every year. Again, it is not a gun issue. I respect what you're saying. I just respectfully disagree with it as well. It is not a gun issue, because if we truly had a gun issue problem, there are more than enough guns than people in the United States, and we would know if it was truly a gun issue.
Yeah, Ed, do you want me to show the ShotSpotter thing that you shared with me?
Well, yeah, if you want, I put it in the post, but yeah, if you want, you could put it there.
If you want, I'll show it to the folks. So, Ed, you could set this up. Let me just take Phil's. Thank you, Phil, for that. It's amazing in 2022 in Texas that this school was not secure. Yeah, it's just, it's amazing. You want to set this up before I put it on?
Okay, so I do some consulting for a computer software company that does criminal investigative software. They worked exclusively with the NYPD, and now they're all over the nation, and they've been bought up by a company called ShotSpotter. And I used to write blogs for them. And I wrote a blog just after the Parkland shooting about these issues, and I posted it in the chat.
All right, so I'm gonna put that on the screen. This is ShotSpotter. And Ed, can you just explain to them what ShotSpotter is? It's a great program, and just let the people know, because some people might not know what the heck you're talking about.
Okay, so ShotSpotter is a company that makes a device that it puts this device out in your community. You might see them on telephone poles or on sides of buildings, and it's out there 24/7, 365. And there are multiple units all around specific communities that have purchased them. And what it does is it listens for gunshots. And then when it hears the gunshots, it triangulates and identifies the area of where the shot was fired, and it notifies law enforcement to respond there automatically.
Right. And I'm going to tell somebody about ShotSpotter in my experience recently. I'm the director of security at a large facility. We have an active shooter plan that I put together, and we go through this on a regular basis with the employees. There was shots fired outside of my building one morning before I came in. Thank God it was before myself and my employees came in. And the Nassau County Police and the New York City Police have ShotSpotter. And when I pulled up, there was 5 or 6 police vehicles in front of my building where I work. And I was like, what the hell happened? And I quickly found out that there was shots fired in front of my building at about 6 a.m. And ShotSpotter detected it and gave them an exact location of where the shots were fired. There was the casings in the street. I assisted the police with my video at my location, and they were able to make an arrest based on the video and ShotSpotter. So kudos to ShotSpotter for that. I'm going to show your article, Ed. It's a great tool for law enforcement. I'm going to make it full screen, and you could see right here. I'll make it big for the folks. Oh, wait, hold on. I'm going to make it big for the folks like me that can't see well. So this is Ed Wallace, first grade detective from the NYPD, offers his opinion on the state of gun control in the wake of mass shooting events. When did you write this, Ed?
There should be a date on there.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. Valentine's Day marked the 1-year anniversary.
No. It should be up on the top. April 30th, 2019.
There you go. Yeah, I see it right up there.
So it's a law enforcement perspective on we need more than gun control laws. And it deals with the Parkland shooting and what we should be doing afterwards. And I list what the Florida government did, the state government of Florida did by passing certain laws, okay, and some of which were challenged and repealed. But then I go down and I list, some of the federal assets that are out there to help, such as Congress passed the 2018 Stop the Violence Act, but which funded numerous school safety initiatives. And I talk about that. And if you scroll down, we go down even further, and I talk about my experience in law enforcement and what I see from the streets, and I have to deal with the after effects. I have to deal with these dead people that are shot. All right. I talk about school board initiatives and talk about a multifaceted approach. And then I list, some 4 bullets here about, what can be done on the local level for the school boards. And so please, take your time, read it. I'm not going to read it to you here. It's on there. You can take a look at it for yourself.
Hold on. I have to highlight this one comment right here.
No, not even close. Not even close.
Connie says, Ed Wallace for president. I'm going to link this entire article down below in the description, along with Jennifer Coffindaffer's and Ed's social media. You have Crime Time with DutyRon. If you're not yet subscribed, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Give me, Jen, and Ed the thumbs up on this. Share it out to your social media platforms. Put it onto Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever your favorites are. Ed and I are on all of those platforms under DutyRon, and we're also on TikTok. And we're not swinging from a pole in TikTok. We are doing snippets of our crime shows, and we're putting them on TikTok. So I think we're up to about 5,000 or 6,000 subscribers on there. We're starting to grow on TikTok. I appreciate each and every one of you. I want to just say, first and foremost, thank you to Jennifer. She's traveling. She had her husband misplaced her dog earlier today. Hopefully they'll ral their little guy up, 4 months old, little beagle. Hopefully they get him back. I'm praying. My dog, we had a little bit of a mishap today, little Oscar on the security detail. He hurt his left paw coming up the stairs on our deck, and he slipped. And we thought that he was, something bad happened. We took him to the hospital tonight. All this before we went live. Ed Wallace's Kara is doing great potty training.
Yeah, she thinks my arm is her chew toy.
Oh, she did you?
Oh yeah, she got me. She got me the little sharp teeth.
I'm going to go around to my guests for final words and final thoughts. Ed, I'll start with you. Anything for the troops?
I if you don't mind, I'd just like to say a prayer, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let their perpetual life shine upon them. May their souls and the souls of all the faithfully departed through the mercy of God rest in peace. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that, Ed. Jen, any words?
Well, you mentioned dogs. It occurs to me, if maybe more of these young kids had a dog to love and to care for, that maybe we'd see a little bit less of this if they had something to live for, like a dog, for those dog lovers out there. But all that aside, I would just again reiterate my prayers to this family, to this community that is really suffering right now, and say I really hope this is a wake-up call for all the communities in the U.S. to get better control of these schools.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you for that, Jen. Hey, and as I always like to end all of these things, first and foremost, before we go into, how I end these lives, I want to say thank you to our law enforcement across the country, across the world, the men and women of law enforcement and our first responders. That's the paramedics, the fire department, all the folks who help be that first responder. I want to say thank you to you, and may God be with all of you. To the victims and families of these victims, we again pray here. Thank you for that, Ed, those kind prayers and those words. Us as a community, all we can do is, again, support by positive comments. Don't bash, don't hate, appreciate the folks that are out there doing what they can, and let's have a conversation about change and real life safety for our children. As I like to end all of these, God bless the world, God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially all the victims in crime and their families. We send them thanks, prayers, positive vibes. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Ed. I'll see you guys all very soon.
Thank you so much. Bye, Ed. Bye, Ron.
Bye again.
Good night, everybody.